some winners and then we say let's go. So come on, it's time to watch the show. We're talking hardball, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw. We're talking hardball, over under on the hot dogs.
Welcome into a live edition of Betting Weekly Hardball on this Tuesday. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Wes Reynolds as the pennant races are starting to really kind of finalize themselves, but also tighten. So it's drama across the landscape of baseball and how that affects our handicapping. We will discuss over the next little bit. Wes, good to be back with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We're through the first week of the NFL, and now we turn to the week with baseball. It seems like sometimes because bettors want to bet what they can bet today and not necessarily just wait for the weekend. And we have plenty of really good baseball. I know you'll be doing the Fast Break show with Albert next. Last week of the regular season for the WNBA. So, man, this is a busy time of year.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You talk to professional handicappers and bettors across the landscape, and they know the advantage we have as bettors on this side of the counter this time of year, because it's not like the sports books add odds makers during this stretch run. It's they just got to be all hands on deck, and obviously they have the advantage of technology in the market and flagged accounts to alert them, but this is when we can sort of pick off some things where they might be a little bit asleep at the wheel. Now, I'm not talking about manual error with a team like the Aces will be plus 18 instead of minus 18 on the betting line, but it's more about, hey, this feels low, or this juice, or, or a derivative that doesn't, move in the market in a domino effect of sorts. So that's something that we can really take advantage of, because yes, they have the built-in house advantage from the odds perspective, but we have the advantage because we don't have to put odds or bet every game. They do. They're essentially betting on every game, and they're putting odds on all of these. So let's get right to it. This game on national television on TBS, the Yanks hosting the Tigers. Both teams were off yesterday, so this is game one of their series. Detroit was at one point the favorite in the American League, going to have the best record, but that's not the case. These two teams are only separated by a game and a half, and the Yankees aren't even in first place, obviously. They're 2 games back at Toronto. Tigers are 4-9 in their last 13. Yanks, big favorites at home here in the Bronx. Will Warren on the bump. He said back-to-back strong starts. Casey Mize is a guy that I can't really figure out, Wes, because he can pitch well, then he can pitch awful, and it's just not somebody I want to sort of go to the bank with either way.
Yeah, nothing on the side here for me either, for the reasons that you mentioned. Will Warren does have back-to-back strong starts, but the key is that, because I was looking at maybe some of his props, and it's like, can this the guy go 5 innings? And that's pretty much what he goes anyway. That's his peak. He doesn't pitch into the 6 all that often, but looking at this game, I do like the under here at 8.5. I believe at Bet Rivers it is minus 118 currently, and that's in line pretty much with the market. Wind blowing in a little bit, cooler temperatures in New York. Both teams had the day off, so you have rested bullpens. And it's kind of interesting in baseball, and really in any sport, Doug, when we've been talking about, oh man, this Yankee bullpen, because they had that really bad run, right? Where Devin Williams and all these guys, Bednar, of course, was up against it, almost blew it in Houston last Thursday night, but was able to get out of the jam. But the Yankee bullpen, which is pretty well publicly maligned, has actually been pretty solid over the last month. When you look at the xFIP and the strikeout minus the walk rate over the last month, so their bullpen has actually been a lot better than I think maybe the market gives it credit for. Nothing for me on the side. I think it's priced about right, but under 8.5 is the way I'm going to go, even though you have kind of two very much up and down starters here. But I do think that you have rested bullpens. If these guys get in trouble, advantage would go to the Yankees, I think, from a bullpen standpoint, based on what I've seen over the last month. But we're going to go under the total here.
A couple things, because I was close to pulling the trigger, but I was worried that this Yankees offense is actually good. So my question to you is the Yankees offense now good?
It's okay. I mean, I think it could be hit and miss, but really, when you get the bottom of the lineup, that's where you know that the offense is going to be good. When you get that bottom of the lineup start hitting, especially Jazz Chisholm, who's been hitting in the 6 and the 7 spot. So these guys at the bottom haven't necessarily been easy outs. And really, the story of the year, I think, for the Yankees offense, everybody will point to Judge as the likely AL MVP. But the team MVP might be Trent Grisham, I think. And you saw it, I think, last Thursday night when he hit that home run to put it away against Houston. This guy has been terrific this year. The average isn't much, but 30 home runs this year. They've been able to put him in the leadoff spot. He's been able to get on base, and he obviously hits for power. McMahon, I think, has been solid, has kind of found a role a little bit there. They need to get Volpe hitting. Volpe is the guy, if you were to kind of pinpoint a guy that's really struggling, it's been Volpe down there, just not getting on base enough, not putting the ball in play enough. But yeah, the Yankees offense is certainly always dangerous, but I think tonight maybe get a little bit kept at bay. They've been playing, you'll see these guys because every once in a while they'll have like one of those like 11-8 wins. But they'll also have a lot of 4-3s and 3-2s as well. And I think maybe one of those are going to be in order tonight.
All right, so under 8.5 minus 118. I had another question for you because I was really close to pulling the trigger on something along these lines. First 5 is 4.5. Now you mentioned the bullpens being rested. That was part of your handicap. And the crooked number can really doom you on a first 5, but you can get away with it maybe in a game over under, but you also have the back end, you have extras. And so I was wondering your rationale and your thought, and I'm sure our audience is too, the reason for going for the game under versus a first 5 under when it is sort of favorable at 4.5 on the first 5.
Well, sometimes I'll split these, like half and half. I have not yet done that. Tonight, I already did play the 8.5. I would lean under certainly first 5, minus 115, pretty much across the board. One thing, with Will Warren, I don't want him to be walking guys, and that worries me a little bit. He averages about 3.8 per 9 innings. Now he's kept him down against Houston. It didn't have any in the last start, and then had 2 against the White Sox. But there have been times where he gives up like a lot of free passes. Against Boston, he gave up 3. Against Philly, he gave up 3. Atlanta, the Cubs. So against some of the better teams, and the Tigers certainly can hit. Now they strike out a lot too. That's one thing that you want to also look at with the Tigers, because they are very aggressive at the plate. And they do strike out a lot, which is one of the other reasons I really like the under here. And I actually did consider a little bit Will Warren over 5.5 strikeouts, but thought that could have been a little bit high. The Tigers, top 10 in strikeout rate, actually 5th in the league. So they're getting very aggressive, and they've been, like you said, that streak. They're not on exactly a hot streak right now, even though they should be in a really comfortable position to win the AL Central. I would lean first 5. I have not bet that as of yet, but sometimes when I play those totals, I will split them half and half. But officially, we'll go under 8.5 tonight.
All right, sounds good. So Wes, under 8.5 for that game, minus 118. I was very close on that one. Just a reminder, if you like what you hear on our shows, sign up for the newsletter, get exclusive tips and the free Insider magazine. Sign up for free at bettingweeklystudios.com, and it really is great stuff. So I highly recommend it. So we touched on the Yankees. Now let's touch on the Mets, who lost game 1 of their pivotal series with the Phillies yesterday. Metropolitans have now lost 3 straight. So they were putting some heat on Philly, but that's not the case right now. Now they turn to Manaea with Suarez going. So they lost yesterday with their young stud Nolan, 1-0 game. And now they have to go to Manaea against Suarez. So Phillies understandably favored here, $1.32, over unders 8, little juice to the over. So that's something to keep in mind. It's hard to look at an over or under when you see a 1-0 game, but that's what we have here. Wes, any read on this game?
Yeah, I like the Mets here on the plus side, and I know that's kind of dangerous with Sean Manaea, who's been very erratic, but also very unlucky when you look at it. 5.83 on the ERA, certainly it's like, oh man, this guy's been getting shelled, and he has been shelled a couple times, but only 346 on the fielding independent pitching. So that's almost a 2.5 run advantage. And you don't see that kind of discrepancy very often in starting pitchers. You might see like a half run here, quarter run here. A guy's a 4.75 ERA, but 4.50 on the exit. This is a really big discrepancy. And if you look at it, he's been very unlucky in the batting average balls in play. I have him down there. I was looking at Fangraphs at 315. That is very high, because what do we say? The league starting average is about mid 290s for a starting pitcher from an xFIP standpoint. So 315 is very high if you're in the 300 range. But he's been, he hadn't been walking really many guys, averaging under 2 walks per 9 innings, but just have been unlucky. Balls find holes, and that's how you get a high batting average balls in play, or BABIP, as they call it. So when you have that, a guy that's striking out a lot of guys, which Sean Manaea is 11.23 per 9 innings and not walking many guys, you're like, how is he losing? Well, he's getting very unlucky. And he gets a little bit of fortune tonight because the Phillies now have 2 guys that are pretty good hitters, and certainly better hitters against left-handed pitching. Trey Turner and Alec Baum got put on the injured list last Monday, the 15-day disabled or injured list, whatever you want to call it, especially Turner in that leadoff position. He's a much bigger loss, I think, for the Phillies over the next couple weeks. So that's a break for Sean Manaea. And it's also a break for the Mets on the other side, because they've been crushing lefties lately, and they're getting a lefty tonight in Ranger Suarez. Number 1 in WRC plus against left-handers over the last month are the New York Metropolitans. And then if this gets down to the bullpen, I prefer the Mets a little bit, because Philly has had to use Robertson. They've had to use Strom. They've had to use Duran in basically 3 of the last 5 days. So they're not exactly a well-rested bullpen here. McClain went some distance last night for the Mets, even though he took his first loss. But yeah, I thought that this price was a little bit high here. And I think it's high because of, you're going to look at Manaea's ERA and say, damn, he's got an ERA at almost 6, but he's been, I think, very unlucky. So if you really go inside the numbers, he's pitched a lot better than I think his numbers would indicate. So New York Mets on the money line for me tonight. I believe at Bet Rivers, as I'm looking right now, it is plus 117, right in line with the market. I'm going with the Mets tonight.
Okay. So a little candy there for the Metropolitans. Question for you, though, and wonder how much you care, because I know Chris Massaro talks about this quite a bit in terms of the home and road record. And more, obviously, they have a legitimate edge, whoever the home team is, because of the later innings, you get the second ups. Phillies are 46-23 at home, just a monster record, best in baseball. How much does that factor into your handicap and ability or willingness to pull the trigger here, when obviously pitchers control so much more of the situation?
Not a lot. I look at more at the situation, and quite frankly, and the Phillies have beaten good teams, don't get me wrong, but a lot of that comes against the Pirates and the Marlins and some of the weaker teams that you see in the National League. So I don't really look as much at home and away splits. Where I start with baseball handicapping is always with the pitching matchups. And that's where I went to tonight, even though New York is on a little bit of a losing skid right now with 3 straight. I don't put as much value. I don't want to say I put no value in home and away splits, but I don't really do that. I think you have to look at the individual matchups before anything.
Okay. Good stuff across the board on that. So taking a little underdog action with the Mets to bounce back after losing 1-0 yesterday. Hey, get up to a 100% profit boost on your MLB same game parlay today. Opt in at Bet Rivers and get your MLB midweek profit boost on any same game parlay with odds of plus 100 or longer. Check the Bet Rivers app for full details. Next game I want to discuss, and this is a guy who just continues to baffle me, and I've been writing him after the first couple starts, and it's Cade Horton with the Cubs visiting the Braves. This rookie has been absolutely outstanding. In his last up-teen starts, he's only had 1 game that was considered bad. He gave up 4 earned in 4 2/3 2 months ago to the day. Since that, he's been 0 or 1 in all but one start, and his one quote unquote bad outing was giving up 2 earned in Coors Field. So Cade Horton's been fantastic. He's actually the second betting favorite for NL Rookie of the Year behind Baldwin, which I guess makes sense, but I don't know what more you want Horton to do, but eventually he could get there. So Baldwin is the odds-on favorite. But in terms of this matchup, Cubbies are coin flip odds here. And I'm going to have to take the Cubs. Now, the question is, do I like them on the first 5? Also, the under the Cubs offense has been, since the beginning of August. Remember, August, they started like 17-1-1 to the under. And then the Cubs offense has just been so shaky of late. So I'm torn between doing Braves team total under, first 5 under, or just bet the Cubs and hope we can get a few runs. How would you play this with Horton matched up against Spencer Strider?
Yeah, I actually don't know what to do with this. Had the Braves last night just on a fade of Shota, who I thought was really due a lot of regression. And you saw it early. They tapped him for 3 runs, but then they couldn't get anything off of him after that. So it was a little bit of a sweat, even though the Braves put it away late. I don't know what to do with this one because I don't want to back Spencer Strider necessarily. And they skipped his last start, by the way. So that's not really, I think, a positive sign for a guy that really has dipped this year. Win-loss record I know is overrated, but 5-12 in 19 starts, just has not pitched well. He's almost at a 5 ERA. However, Cade Horton, who has been terrific, could he be due a little bit of regression? 2.62 on the ERA, but a 4.32 on the fielding independent pitching. So that's, 1.7 runs difference. They are giving him a little bit more of a leash. I have noticed that. I believe I want to say it's 5 of the last 7 starts that he's gone into the 6. So he had been, kind of a steady Eddie, like 5-inning pitcher, and they'd let him go 80 to 85 pitches, and then they would turn it over the bullpen. But he has been getting so many good results that they've allowed him to go into the 6th. So I lean Cubs here, but not enough for me to bet because I do worry about that Horton regression. By the way, Kyle Tucker, questionable if he is going to be in the lineup battling that calf issue. So certainly a guy that's up there in terms of batting first, second, third early in that lineup. But I lean Cubs, but as of now, no bet for me.
Right. So I guess I skipped a question. So you don't think it's an auto bet on Horton? You
No.
want to catch the falling knife and fade him when you think he might hit a wall. What if he never hits a wall and this guy's one of the next young great pitchers?
Well, that's baseball, Susan, as they say. You never know because there are always some guys that you see the regression and then they never get it. That's what it is in baseball. And that's one of the tricky things because it's like, okay, it's coming right here. It's coming right here. And then it doesn't happen. So there's a possibility that Cade Horton continues to kind of pitch a little bit above his metrics. And that's why I'm a little gun shy tonight. And that's mainly because of Strider, because we just haven't seen the consistency out of this guy and how great he was a couple years ago. I know he had a pretty good start in Miami a couple starts ago. By the way, Strider did just face this team on September.
So that was
1st.
my next question.
Yeah.
So did Horton. They just faced this lineup. So what edge do you give to either the pitcher or the batter here? How do you handicap that?
You would certainly maybe think that the hitters seeing these guys a second time so soon because they last faced, I believe it was September 3rd. Neither guy got the decision. Horton pitched a little bit better, given no earned runs through 5 innings and striking out 6. So maybe the over, if you made me on a total, I would think that this would be an over game with these pitchers, having been seen within the last week, but didn't have enough of an edge right now. The market is pretty static, by the way, at 8.5. But if you force me, I would bet the over here.
Right. So we're going to clash a little bit because I'm going to make my first official play, and it's going to be a first 5 under 4.5 at -115 juice. I do not think highly of the Cubs lineup. They've been in a tailspin for a month and change. You mentioned Tucker's status. Strider can give me a little bit of something, but I also believe in Horton. I've been riding him. Again, in the last month and a half, he's had one outing where he's given up 2 earned or more, and that was 2 earned runs in Colorado. So at the altitude of Coors Field. So not going to really put too much stock in that. I think this is a 3-1 Cubs lead after 5. So I'll also bet the Cubs in the first 5 on the two-way line -114. at Bet Rivers. I'm going to continue to ride Horton. I think he's outstanding. I'm tempted to bet the over 4.5 strikeouts at plus money, plus 118. But to your point, Wes, I'm keeping this first 5 because he has been getting sort of limited. Even you mentioned the last start last Wednesday, 5 innings of shutout ball and no hits. Okay, just 1 walk, so nearly perfect. 6 strikeouts. They yanked him after 75 pitches. So they're going to coddle him into the season, things like that. And that's what we saw. Look at the Dodgers, right? They've been close to no hitters. That the starters aren't going the distance. It is what it is. But I'm going to focus on the first 5. That's how I'm going to play it. And hopefully we get there with the low-scoring Cubs win through 5 innings. All right.
Well, good luck to you on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back. I like Horton. I think he's got nasty stuff. I think he's in the running for Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's second favorite. So we saw the graphic a little bit behind Drake Baldwin, but something to keep in mind as he takes the mound, and we'll see if those odds stay up in the betting market at Bet Rivers. Really interesting situation here with the Astros visiting the Blue Jays. So Toronto's first place, getting some heat from some other teams. Houston's first place in the AL West, also catching some heat. Stros just 2-game lead over Seattle, 3.5 over Texas. They are underdogs here north of the border. Luis Garcia going for Houston. Now, he just made his first start in over 2 years. He was 6 innings, 3 earned, 6 strikeouts, so decent. This guy had Tommy John surgery, then other setbacks, comes back, does get 6 solid innings, all things considered. So the question is, how do you handicap a situation like this? I mean, I trust that the Astros have him out there because he's at full strength. And I would not say he's, on thin ice or anything silly like that. But with Bieber going for the Jays, now Bieber's been a guy who could certainly swing the race or even the postseason, because if he's in his Cy Young form, then you get the Toronto staff, and Toronto in general is much different. So it's either Barrios or Bieber going today. I don't know if there was an update and what the situation is.
It is Bieber. It is Bieber, because
Okay.
I was looking to play Barrios, and he is not going until tomorrow. But kind of going on what you were saying with Garcia, he had those 6 innings in the first start back from the injury. You usually don't see that. You usually see more of a pitch count. And
Right.
okay, we're going to send him out, 4, or try to do that. So that's why you don't see a lot of books really having the under outs up, because I would certainly lean under 15.5, but that's not widely available really in the market right now, because I think the market doesn't know and the books don't know. Okay, was that an anomaly that we sent him out there that he ended up going 6 innings? I don't know. So you're probably not going to be able to bet that very many places with Garcia. Meanwhile, Bieber's been pretty solid in his 3 starts. Now, he had more rehab starts in Buffalo as well. So you knew that he was kind of ready to go, that they weren't going to necessarily baby him. 4.15 ERA in his 3 starts, but only a 2.04 on the xFIP. He's been really good, and he still has the strikeout stuff, which is something that I think is very good to see. 9 against the Marlins, 6 against Miami, 6 in Cincinnati in his last start. So he still does have the put away stuff and able to get a lot of swings and misses, and, hooks that slider in and gets a lot of called third strikes as well. So for me, it'd be an underlean here between Garcia and Bieber.
What about over 5.5 strikeouts? It's plus money at Bet Rivers, plus 107.
For Shane Bieber?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that actually right now. Was just perusing the market a little bit. I think it's right. I think it's right, and I know Bet Rivers is at plus money, and there's some 4.5 where you got to lay heavy juice. And I'm not afraid, by the way. Some people are kind of afraid of laying juice on some of these props. I don't think you can do that. I think that there's a reason why, especially when you get to like recorded outs. Strikeouts, there's a little bit more variance. But when you get to recorded outs, there is a reason why there will be times where you will see 15.5 and heavy juice the under, minus 160, minus 170, minus 180, because they're 5-inning pitchers. And because especially if bullpen's are rested, that's what you got to monitor, is that bullpen usage. And if the bullpen is rested, there are some managers that are going to trust those guys where it's like, okay, we don't want this starter to go third time through the order. I know that that's a little bit off topic from the specific matchup we were discussing, but I just want to let people know, that that's kind of how it works. And don't always be afraid, but and everybody's betting style is different and their bankrolls are different, but don't be afraid sometimes to lay the big juice on some of these props.
I agree with you. It's like the draft betting, the positions, each slot matters a lot. Let me throw some couple trends your way in this game. The Nerfy has cashed in 10 straight Houston Astros games. Any Nerfy interest here?
I don't bet those usually. I would certainly, want to follow the trend instead of trying to buck it. I think necessarily because the
Right.
the Astros
Well, the
lineup,
trend would speak to at least Houston's inability to score early, right? Like, at
right,
least that's something that's tangible with that trend.
right, because you're looking. Put aside, the anomaly of the fact they ended up 11-0 win against Texas and had a big score against the Yankees. They have been struggling, I think, a little bit offensively and trying to figure. Alvarez missed some time. He is now back in the lineup, so certainly that's a feather in their cap. But yeah, these guys have just they go into funks. I think really they absolutely go into funks offensively. And, maybe they can tee up on some of the bullpens, but against the starters, like you said, with that trend, they've absolutely been struggling.
And then another one is Jordan Alvarez has homered in 3 of his last 4 games in Toronto. Anything about maybe he likes the food, maybe he likes the way the pitch comes out of a batter or pitcher's hand? Anything, or is that, it's a pretty small sample size, let's be
Could
fair.
could be, but baseball is like the master of statistical anomalies, right? And when you look at that, you get a lot of these fun angles and you get a lot of these fun trends, and sometimes they work out. I'm not, especially hitter props. I concentrate on more pitcher props because I think that's more where my edge is and where I'm better.
Mhm.
Hitter props are a little bit of lottery tickets, if we're being honest. Now, there's always somebody that's good in a market, right? There's always somebody that's like, oh man, I can't hit those. And then somebody's really good at it with homer props and with hitter props. I personally think they're tough for me. So that's why I don't necessarily bet them. I mean, you don't want to necessarily be stubborn and be like, well, I can figure it out. I can figure it out. Sometimes you just know, yeah, it's not really for me. And if you're going to bet those, I think because they're kind of lottery tickets, you want to bet them a little bit smaller than you would if you're traditionally playing sides and totals.
Okay. Good. But it's good to share that because, it's hard to be great at everything, right? And that's why we have different hosts on different shows, even that particular day. But it's good to know your limitations, where you've had success, where you can go back to the well. I've always said WNBA is my best sport. I think it's the softest market of everything, but it's obviously tough to get down money in terms of scale, but that's not usually a huge issue for a lot of our audience. But it's good to know that you don't do great with pitch or batter props. So that's smart to stay your lane and evaluate the balance sheet, so to speak. Let's check in on the Cardinals and Mariners. I mentioned Seattle right on the tails of Houston, 2 games back. George Kirby going at home with the Cards in town. Liberatore is on the bump. Seattle's won 3 straight. Big favorites here, over $2 at -205. Low total as well. So Mariners behind one of their aces with Kirby, and not a lot of runs expected. I will say, this Cardinals team's at least putting up a fight down the home stretch. This is not a team. They're basically playing 500 ball. They've been okay. Took 2 of 3 in San Francisco when the Giants were red hot. I think they had won 9 of 11, including game 1 of their series. And then the Redbirds take the next 2. Run line, if you want to get frisky, although it's a low total, but it's plus money, at least instead of laying 205. Any read here? I like Kirby. I want to go to the war with him, but I don't want to lay 205.
Yeah, and I don't think that you should here. I would actually lean Cardinals a little bit on the plus price because Kirby has been so erratic. Look at his last start in Tampa Bay. He goes 2 innings, gives up 10 hits and 7 earned. Now, it's very rare you see him get knocked out that early. And then the game before at Cleveland, he goes 7. Game before against the A's, he goes 6. And then he goes 4 2/3 in Citi Field against the Mets, gives up 12 hits and 7 earned. So this guy has been really up and down in a lot of his metrics, by the way, in terms of the xERA, strikeout minus the walk rate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the metrics have been down for George Kirby, and George Kirby, like the management of the Mariners pitching by Dan Wilson is very hard to predict, because there are some times where some of these starters, including at times Kirby earlier in the season, or a Castillo, or Brian Wu, it's been more consistent where he like
Yeah,
always
Wu's
goes 6
solid.
innings. But some of these other guys, there are sometimes they'll be cruising and he'll pull them with like 80 pitches, Dan Wilson. And you're like, what the hell happened here? He does that with Logan Gilbert too, who's a really elite pitcher, I think, for that team. So the Mariners props are always a crapshoot for me from a pitching standpoint, because I don't know what Dan Wilson is going to do. He clearly trusts his bullpen, and they've got an above average bullpen there in Seattle. But, is this a bounce back for Kirby? Because that's kind of been the pattern, where he has kind of a shaky start and then he bounces back and then he has another shaky start. If you made me, I would lean Seattle here. Or St. Louis
Seattle,
here, I should
okay,
say.
yeah.
No, St. Louis. Correct myself there. Even though Seattle has a lot more to play for, and they're certainly right in the mix. They're only 2 back in the West. Cardinals still, I guess, if you want to say alive, they're only 4.5 out of the wild card, but they're probably done, even though they keep kind of hanging around. Look, Cincinnati was right there, and then San Francisco passed them. So still plenty of games, still, 15 to 20 games for a lot of these
Yeah.
teams. I guess anything can happen. So you don't want to never say never, even though the Cardinals, I think, kind of dealing into an inside straight to make the wild card, considering they were sellers at the deadline, but would lean them a little bit. Now, Liberator, basically a 5-inning pitcher, not a guy that they really get a lot of length with. I think he's been pretty solid this year for a guy that was a middle reliever that they, have now made into a starter. He gives you decent outings, never really has dominant stuff by any stretch of the imagination, but Cardinals would be my lean here. I want to see it out of Kirby, because it is hard to go to war, like you were saying with Kirby, when he had such a horrible start in Tampa. So you still wonder, okay, is this bounce back, or is there something really wrong here with this guy?
I don't do it a lot, but I have done it. Would you take the dog on the run line? So plus 1.5, minus 132. So you have the Mariners at home, and if it gets to the 9th and extras, you obviously more likely to win by 1 run, like the Padres did last night and walked it off. Low scoring total, 7.5. Kirby's been a little erratic, or is this a situation where Kirby either is going to pitch great or get touched up, and the Cardinals plus 170 is too good to pass up?
That's what kind of worries me a little bit. And I do play the run line sometimes with the plus 1.5. I very rarely lay it with the favorite, actually. I actually take it more with the dog. And I usually do that when there is a low total, and especially if that total is getting bet to the under, which this is not as of now, even though it's still a low total at 7.5. It's over in terms of minus money, minus 120, by the way, at Bet Rivers. And that's pretty much market across the board. So I usually like that. I think there's more of an edge when the total is lower, and it's getting maybe a little bit bet to the under. So as of now, it would be a pass for me. So I would probably just take the money line instead of the run line plus 1.5. But I will do that with the dog from time to time. I know a lot of people don't do that. You see a lot more minus 1.5s than you do plus 1.5s, and I think that can get a little dangerous. And I think sometimes. And I think that's a good point you bring up, Doug. Sometimes bettors ignore that. It's like plus 1.5 or plus 1.5, I should say, laying some juice. Those aren't always the worst bets necessarily. People are so afraid to lay juice, right, I think. And
you don't with the quote unquote worst team, right? The worst of the two teams.
Yeah, and you don't want to obviously get out of control with it and lay ridiculous juice and burn your bankroll and burn how you're betting and all of your money. But every situation is different, and I don't think laying juice is necessarily a bad thing of laying favorites. Plus 1.5, minus 130s or 140s. I know it's less here in St. Louis, but That's a bet that I do think gets underused, especially when you get like two good starting pitchers. Not that we have two great starting pitchers in this scenario, but when you get two good ones, I think that has a lot of value when that total is getting bet to the under.
Okay. What I was also going to ask is we just have a comment here in the comment section. Rocco Sal says Mariners team total looks tempting, and his next one was 5-3 Mariners is his prediction. So he was looking at team total over 4.5 minus 106 at Bet Rivers. It's not that tempting for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, not necessarily for me either, because they haven't seen Liberator, obviously, because it's AL versus NL here, so they haven't seen these guys. So especially against like a left-hander, sometimes that first couple times through the lineup, if that left-hander goes in unscathed, he's obviously now deep into the fifth inning. If he goes, where he doesn't give up many base runners, where he doesn't walk many guys, or doesn't give up a lot of hits. So that's why I'm a little bit gun shy. I would be a little bit gun shy about betting that over on the team total, because it's a guy that they're not necessarily familiar with and they've seen before.
Good stuff. All right. And just a reminder, get involved in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts, what you like, what you dislike about the show, any questions you have like this. You want to weigh in on a game that we're discussing. We welcome your input. Hey, Brewers can be the first team to reach 90 wins with a W today in Arlington, but the Rangers playing some good ball of late. Chad Patrick goes for Milwaukee. Jack Leiter goes for Texas. Coin flip game here, over under 8. I don't want to bet against either team. Rangers particularly, they're 3.5 back in the West, all of a sudden back in the wild card race. They're playing well. Brewers have certainly cooled off, but they're not a team I'm looking to fade either.
Chad Patrick, by the way, just got called back up from AAA Nashville. His last start was, I believe, August 24th. So, that's always one of those tricky spots. I think when you get a guy called back up that's been kind of a spot starter for this team, that has not been a regular starter by any stretch. So looking at the other side, I've had a little bit of success with Jack Leiter this year in terms of betting under on his props, especially the recorded outs, because he's a guy that's got good stuff and can strike you out. But third time through the order has been very shaky this year. So would lean, if you can find it somewhere out there, would lean a little bit under 15.5 in terms of the recorded outs. And also the Texas Rangers, they're not out of it. We talk about the Brewers, and they've obviously been the best story in the National League, having the best record. If you look at the AL wild card, all of a sudden there's the Texas Rangers there at 1.5 games back. Like, this team was totally counted out. And now they're all of a sudden just 75 and 70, Seattle 76 and 68, the last team that's right in front of them. So when you get these scenarios, you will see managers maybe manage more, what I should say, in terms of the substituting of the pitchers. So I don't know if Jack Leiter's going into the 6th tonight. I would bet against that he is going to. And I think Bruce Bochy will be very situational and will look to, maybe where you got to want to get a lefty, if you have a lefty batter coming up, and get a lefty in, or righty versus righty. You will see that a lot more, especially with these teams that are close, where they're not going to be like these teams that are out of the races, that are way down in the standings, where it's like, hey, we got to look at a pitcher, and I'm going to bring one up here for another bet I'm going to give out. Where sometimes they're auditioning guys, and they'll leave a starter out there to die if they're out of the race. But if they're in it, they're going to get quick hooks, and I think you could see that for Jack Leiter tonight.
All right, that's really astute handicapping. That's not in the numbers or spreadsheets. So really, really good to factor in that human element. A couple games out west as we stay out there. We were in Seattle not too long ago. NL West, Padres home to the Reds, Dodgers home to the Rockies. Dodgers monster favorites as well. Padres 205. Michael King on the bump for the first time in a month, had a knee injury. They are one game back of LA with Zach Littell going for Cincy. I can't lay that kind of number with the Pods. What about you?
I can't either, but man, the Reds just find ways every time that they give you hope. And by the way, the Reds are my team and have been my whole life. every time they give you hope, like they jumped out on you, Darvish, last night, got 3 runs, they're up 3-0, they end up losing the game. And they took 2 or 3 from the Mets at home, by the way. So it's like, okay, that's the team you're chasing. Now there's some encouragement. The Reds, just too many holes in that lineup right now, I think, for this team. Too many guys that are not hitting consistently. Ellie De La Cruz not hitting consistently, and they need him to. That's a guy that's batting third and cleanup for you. You need him to produce, and he hasn't. I don't think he'd hit a home run since like the end of July. So big number for a guy that's returning from the injured list. I don't like to do that, but I'm not exactly encouraged by the Reds either.
Dodgers got a big 2-out hit from Mookie last night in a 1-1 game in the 7th to win 3-1. That covered the run line as well, which I believe was minus 165 range. Dodgers and Rockies back at it at Chavez Ravine. 360 favorites in this game with Sheehan going against Marquez for Colorado. This was a no-hitter into the 9th again for the second time in 3 games. They lose it as well. This time they didn't lose the game like they did in Baltimore. Run line $1.52. I would consider it, but man, this Dodgers lineup is just not hitting. I can't get involved. Frankly, I would look to under 9, but the Dodgers do hit righties. Marquez could get pounded tonight, but this Dodgers lineup just hasn't done much since the All-Star break.
No, they haven't. The highlight really for the Dodgers, there's certainly one of them, has been the guy that's on the mound tonight, Emmett Sheehan, who is not, one of their primary starters, who seems like, oh man, he's just kind of like a stopgap guy, but he's had some good stuff. Struck out 7 last time he faced Colorado, and Coors went 6 innings, and then struck out 10 against Cincinnati in 7 innings where he pitched shutout ball. And then even against Pittsburgh, where he didn't get out of the 5th, he had 6 strikeouts. So Sheehan's got maybe better stuff than you think. I'm not wanting to bet over on the strikeouts again, even though the Rockies, you can pile them up against this poverty lineup, quite frankly. But I'm not going to go over 6.5. If anything, I might lean under, because the Rockies did just see him a couple weeks ago, and they're still professional hitters. Maybe not very good professional hitters, but nothing for me here with the Rockies. As 40-104 are the Colorado Rockies. By the way, what was that win total? 60.5? Way under. Way under.
Yeah, they've been atrocious. Not only are their money lines so skewed, they're still the biggest net loser in the money lines. So it's just crazy. So even when they win, the juice hasn't been big enough to offset when they've lost. So just kind of crazy in that regard. All right, my man, that's going to do it. Fun show today. A lot of good stuff, good analysis, some games that matter a lot in the pennant race, some that don't at all, but all tickets cash the same, as we like to say. So really good discussion. I know our audience appreciates all the insight. Go ahead, Wes.
One more I do want to give out before we wrap up here. I teased it. Adam Mazur for the Miami Marlins over 15.5 outs. I believe it's still about $1.25 at Bet Rivers. That's the guy I was talking about, where it's like they may be auditioning this guy. It's his 2nd consecutive start against this team. 90 pitches last time across 29 batters. So the Nats are really aggressive and they swing a lot. So there could be some hard hit balls, but I think Adam Mazur is going over. They want the Marlins are out of it. So they're letting these guys pitch a little bit more, where maybe they'll kind of leave a guy out to die at some point. Now this is over 15.5 instead of 14.5 last time, but Adam Mazur over 15.5 outs in kind of a game that's really off the grid with 2 teams that are long eliminated.
I love it. I love finding those needles in the haystack. There was a time early in the season when the Marlins were playing really well and really dangerous to a lot of like big money lines and stuff, and they got there. So Mazur over 15.5, minus 134 at Bet Rivers. So Wes, you're back on the platform on Thursday, Betting Weekly Fast Break. You and I will break down 4 WNBA games on that Thursday, the final day of the W's regular season. We'll also look ahead to the postseason as well. So appreciate everyone. And speaking of Betting Weekly Fast Break, join me top of the hour. I'll be there with Albert, as Wes alluded to. 5 games in the WNBA tonight. So plenty to discuss. And I think there's some interesting betting angles as well. So for Wes Reynolds and everyone else behind the scenes that does all the heavy lifting to make things look so good, I'm Doug Kezirian. Best of luck with your wagers, and we'll see you back here next time.